Hello, folks, and welcome. Today is June 2nd. We're here talking about the sheet metal program. Thank you guys for joining us. Today I have with me an instructor, Willie, and his student, Ian. You can see both of their names. We have Willie at the bottom and mine is from Community College. But for the sake of it, my name is Kalen Beaver. I'm a student recruitment coordinator here at the college, and we're going to go over all the details about sheet metals.
Hello, everybody. I'm Willie DeBay, and the guy to my right would be Ian. Everybody knows.
Right on. So just for the sake of it, just some housekeeping things. The GoToWebinar software, you guys are muted for the entire session, and you guys are not allowed to put your cameras on for the entire session, but we thank you guys for joining. If you have questions, feel free to put them down in the question box down below. I'll be monitoring throughout the session and we'll be able to get to those questions. If you can't get to any of the questions that you guys are having, or if you have questions afterwards, feel free to send an email to recruitment@nscc.ca. And as I mentioned, for the sake of it, if you're watching this back, we're recording this on June 2nd, 2025. So we already did a little intro. Again, Willie's with us, a student. Ian is with us of the program. They're going to have most of the majority of our material and the insights of what it is to be in sheet metal. This session is our sheet metal is located at our Akerley campus. It is a one-year program located in downtown Dartmouth. It is a certificate, so you graduate after the 1 year with your certificate. The admission requirements are high school graduation or diploma. International students, for those who are watching maybe outside of the province, it is post-grad work permit eligible. The floor is yours.
Hello, everybody. I'm Willie DeBay, and this is Ian Bouchon with me today. And basically what we're going to try to do is we're going to give you an idea of what the actual sheet metal program is. Basically, we're located at NSCC Akerley campus. The program that we're going to talk about is a 35-week program. 30 of the weeks are in class, and then 5 of them are work experience, which we usually have set up for the students. Okay, so we're going to give you an idea of what sheet metal actually is. You want to add anything there, bud?
No, not really. It's just a great course, and I really enjoyed my time at NSCC. Yeah.
Right on, right on. All right, so the first question is, what is sheet metal? So basically, sheet metal is, if you go in any building, there's ventilation in the building, okay? Basically, that ventilation and all the components that are installed, we actually install that and do that work. People hear sheet metal and they think that what it is we just work with sheets of metal every day. There's a small percentage of the people that work with the sheets of metal every day. Those would be the top side of the trade, and then there's the installation side of the trade. So what do we actually do? We bring air into the building from the outside. That air either has to be heated up or cooled down. It has to be filtered, and it has to be dehumidified or dehumidified, depending on the requirements of the building that you're actually working with. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. And sheet metal can continue. So this right here would be the installation side of the trade. And if you're looking at the actual slide there, you can actually see the ductwork that has been installed on the actual building. And you can also see where there's actually a code there where they're actually installing an air handling unit and they're putting it on a roof adapter. It looks like it's actually an existing unit that has actually been basically modified to fit this actual unit. Ian, do you want to add anything to that, because you have been out working a little bit with the installation and that's what you're doing, so I think maybe you might want to add a little something to that.
Yeah, I have been working out on the job, doing install for over about a month now. So I guess the picture on the left there with the ductwork system, like that's the stuff I'm doing every day basically. I'm running off, planning off the heat pump unit basically, and then I'm running all the lines that are going from from the outside to the inside and throughout the unit. Like we're building an apartment building, for example. So yeah, I'm doing this stuff every day, basically. Yeah.
Right on. Can we go to the next slide? Yeah. This right here is just giving a little bit more installation portion of the sheet metal. It's just showing you a duct line, and then they're showing you an exterior where we're basically just putting cladding over piping that is on the outside of the building. And basically the idea of the cladding is to protect the actual the pipe that's on the inside, and then there'd be some kind of insulation, and then there'd be copper or aluminum or something along the outside, and it'd be watertight, so the weather never gets to that. So for the further installation. Okay, we can go to the next slide too. Okay. Oh, there we go. So now we're going to talk a little about the shop side of the sheet metal. Our trade is a little bit different than a lot of the other trades. Most trades, you go to the manufacturer and you just basically pick up whatever components you need. Our trade, you can do that with a little bit of the stuff. We do have some stuff that's manufactured, but a lot of the stuff is custom made for the actual project that you're working on. So this is what you have to learn. You have to learn how to actually make different types of components, different fittings, different components in the actual shop. And as you can see on the right, that would be Atlantica shop, and it's a really large shop. And they have a coil line machine there. Basically, it comes out almost like that. They put the actual, you can see the TDC on the actual duct there. They put the corners on, and then it's done. So it's a nice, easy process there. Not all shops are pushing like that. A lot of the stuff you'll learn is what we'll do in class. We'll actually learn the process to make the actual ductwork. You want to add anything to that, because you actually got to do it in the class and everything? So there's something you want to mention?
Yeah, I did. Like the stuff we do in class is very similar to what you're gonna experience when you're in the shop. I spent a few days in the shop before I went on the job doing install, and yeah, all the skills I learned basically went right to work my very first day in the shop. So it translates really well on what we do in class and then what we do on the job. Yeah.
Ian was an elite student though, so every student's a little bit different. So some people find the transition a little easier than others. I just want to say that, right? But yeah, we will go through a lot, and most people will actually have a pretty good understanding of what we're actually doing when we actually are in the shop and in the installation side of things. So, okay. So the next thing we're going to get into are the basic courses that we actually do in our program, and that is the sheet metal systems at basically Acre campus. We'll start with safety and rigging, tools and equipment, power tools and equipment, pattern development and layout, fabrication fundamentals 1 and 2, introduction to air handling, metallurgy, welding and cutting process, and math and applied mathematics. There's also communications, which is not on there, but you will get into that as well. You want to mention anything that you really liked, what your favorite was of these courses? I don't know what it would be, but
I think everybody really liked the metallurgy. Of course, welding is a lot of fun, and we spent a pretty good amount of time on it, and we do some pretty fun projects with it too that are a lot of fun to make. And yeah, I think everybody really enjoys that one. And soldering as well is a lot of fun.
yeah, right on.
Hmm.
Okay, we're good to go to the next one, I guess. All right, so the next thing we're going to get into the safety and rigging. So when we started with the safety and rigging, I could probably go into what you actually start with. So when we start with the safety, we go into our milestones, and the milestones that we cover, you start with your WMS and OH&S. And the idea of this right here is you need these courses before you can actually get in the shop and work. So we start with those. Then we have other milestones that you'll do online that you'll finish yourself. I'm just trying to think. You got confined space, hazard identification, auto tagout, respiratory, things like that. And then we'll get into the rigging side of things, and there's a lot of components to the rigging. So you'll get an insight into the rigging, different signals, and basically different components and how they actually are relevant to our trade and how we actually use them. Ian, you want to add anything to that there, bud?
I would just say that from being on the job, safety is number one. So it's something we talk about all the time, like when we're working, and it can be a dangerous place, the job site at times. So it's important. We spend a lot of time on it in the class, and I think it's good that we do because it just kind of hammers home how important safety is. Yeah.
Yeah, we want everybody going home at the end of the day the way they showed up in the morning, right on, Ian? And that's the way it is. It's very important. Okay, I guess we'll go to the next slide there. So now we'll get into the tools and equipment. Tools and equipment, I'm just trying to think of where we actually started. So we usually started with the hand tools. So the hand tools would be things like hand crimpers, hand seamers, combination square, steel square, snips. Just trying to think of what else. basically scratch gauge, dividers, scramble points, all that kind of stuff. So you learn about those different components, and we'll actually show you how to use them and use them, effectively. We'll also get into basically the equipment that we use is like bench machines and the equipment that's around the shop, the burner folder, the code, punch, ring and circle shears, slip roll form machine, squaring shear, box and pan brake, standard brake, spot welder, Pittsburgh machine, all that stuff. You'll learn about it. You'll be signed off on it, and then you'll be good to go in the shop. And I find we kind of make it progressively. So we use it a little bit simple, very simply, and then we kind of progress so people get a lot more comfortable with it. And then by the end, most people are pretty effective with most of the machinery in the shop. Would you agree with that, Ian? I would say.
Oh yeah, I would, and yeah, when you get out into the shop too, there's like other versions of the same machinery, so you get into some power equipment as well, which is kind of cool. So you can see a nice variety of equipment that you could get to use. So it's kind of fun to play with that stuff too when you get out there.
I love using power tools and things myself. Actually, this is kind of a segue to the power tools. So, like any trade, I think Ian, you've been out on the job, so you're going to see how often we actually use power tools. We go
Mhm.
over that at actually the end of the course just to give you an idea of what you're going to see. But a lot of the power tools you see, you can just see them in the picture there. You see the reciprocating saw, the hammer drill, circular saw. You use the angle drill. You can see the buffer there. You got the grinder, double cutting shears, uni shears, nibblers. There's like a lot of power tools we use. I mean, it's just like you say, and it's getting to be more and more. It's getting so to the point. Even in the computers now, you got power riveters, you got rod cutters, you got like it's unbelievable the power tools that are out there right now. I wish we actually had more that we can actually show you, but like anything, we only have so much of a budget, and only so much that we can actually show you. But at least you have an idea of what it is and you're fairly comfortable with it.
Mhm.
Anything you want to add there, Ian? Or
No, I would just say like we use like power tools every day basically when I'm on the job. Like I'm using a grinder and a impact gun and a ram set. All that stuff is something you'll get really comfortable with using and in the class. And then when you get out there, you'll be ready to use it when you need to. So yeah.
no, I don't. Okay, so the pattern development layout. The pattern development layout. I'm trying to think what I should start with that. I guess the big thing that I should start with that is your basically drafting boards and the drafting equipment. So the idea of this right here is you're going to have to learn the different components that we use for the drafting boards and the components that go along with it. You can see in the picture there, you got your T-square. You're going to have basically uh, I'm just trying to think scale rules and things of that nature. Okay. But anyway, you'll learn the different power or the different tools that we use for the drafting. And with the drafting, the idea is there's all kinds of different fittings that we do. With those different fittings, you'll learn how to do it on paper. Okay. On paper, basically what you'll do is we have simple layout, triangulation, radial line, parallel line development. We'll do all that stuff on paper. And then once you learn how to do it on paper, we'll do it 2 or 3 times on paper. We'll get to the fabrication fundamentals. Did you really like the pattern development yourself, Ian? What would you want to add to you about the pattern development?
I would just say that I find it really helpful like for laying out before you lay it on the metal. You know what I mean? You can erase stuff on paper, you can make mistakes, and it's not so bad. When you start getting with the metal, it's a little harder. You make mistakes. Some of them aren't. You can't erase them. So
You can't
so it's a nice
erase it where you can on the drafting board, which is kind of nice.
yeah. So it's nice
We
to
have a lot of seam allowances and stuff that we use and different transverse and longitudinal seams and stuff like that. Stuff that are, once you see it on paper and then you see it in the actual, hold it, make it, it's quite a different process. But at least it gives you a little bit of insight, get a little practice before you actually do the fabrication fundamentals.
Well, that too. It was really good to have those copies of those later on. I could go back to them and I can reference my drawings and remember how to make fittings just by what I drew, right? Use them as a reference tool too. Mhm.
Yeah, no, that's the idea of it. Right? Definitely. Okay, so I guess we'll get into the fabrication fundamentals. Next slide. Okay, yeah. So we'll be doing fabrication fundamentals in the first and second semester. Okay, there's all kinds of different fittings that we use. Okay, I'm just trying to think of the materials that we mainly use. Galvanized is our main material that we use, and we do a little bit of black iron or mild steel, if you want to call it that. Okay, either one would be fine. And we make all kinds of fittings. We make like rectangular 90s, change 90s, transitions, OG offsets, OG change offsets, Y branch, I take offs, squared arounds, round reducers, transitional 90s, rectangular 45s and 90s. But basically, we do all kinds. And there's different projects that we do that are pretty cool. We make like a little tin man, which is pretty cool using these projects. And we made a town clock last year. And since we did the project with the, you actually did it with skills and with the basically banjo, I think I'm going to actually try to put maybe that in instead of the town clock, just so people can actually do that and see the architectural side and have a little fun with it, right? Because we're just trying to make it so it's not the same thing again and again, and kind of, give people different challenges. What do you want to add? You want to add anything about that with the fabrication fundamentals?
No, I will say like the scale is going to be different. Like when you get out working in the job, a lot of the time, like the fittings we make are smaller because we're in the shop, right? And we're learning. But like when you get out on the job, the fittings may be like 10 times that size, depending on the application. It's something I noticed anyway, right away,
Yeah, way bigger than what you're doing in the actual classroom. And the reason being is it just saves a lot of money. Unfortunately, with the larger stuff, there's a lot more cross breaking, the seam allowances, all that. You're referring to the smack metal a lot more, but obviously a shop atmosphere that's really made for school, not actually the same as when you're out in the field actually working. It's surprising how big some of the fittings actually are. I mean, you can get up to as big as people walking in these fittings and stuff. It's crazy how big.
Yeah, it is.
Most people see just little things that we're doing in class, and that's no, we're doing a lot more than that.
Yeah.
Glad you mentioned that.
Yeah.
All right, so the blueprint reading and sketching. So the blueprint reading and sketching, the first thing is we're going to give you some drawings, and you got to learn about the different components, what the different symbols are on the drawing. You'll learn how to use the scale rule. You'll learn how to do drawings using photographic action. You'll learn how to do drawings with pictorial drawings. What else can I say? You'll learn how to communicate with the shop, so you can draw something up so that you actually get the fitting that you want. If you're communicating back and forth with the shop or other tradespeople on the job, basically things like that. I like this section of the actual course, but I find that it is probably one of the tougher things for people to get familiar with because I've been doing it so long, people are taking all this in all at once, and there's a lot to take in all at once. But most people get get fairly comfortable with it. What would you say about that, Ian, now, because you got your perspective of being in school and actually being on the job?
I would say like we have the blueprints right on our cart, like for the whole floor. Like we have those. We use them as a reference guide. Like we have a little more flexibility with like how we can kind of put some of the stuff in the bulkheads based on how much room we have. They kind of gave us like a general idea, but in the end, sometimes we got to change it a little bit. But we use it every day, and like the way we learn it in class really kind of makes it like a scavenger hunt. So we're looking for pipe and we're looking for different fittings and stuff. So it makes it easier to learn, and you catch on pretty quick. It does seem a little hard at first though, but it's not too bad once you get into it. Yeah.
All right, anything else you want to add there? Or I guess I think we covered that pretty good. Okay, so the introduction to air handling. This section right here, I like this section because all these different components that are on the job, right? VAV boxes, termination boxes, silencers, just trying to think, any kind of ductwork, 90s, transitions, whatever, coils, all this kind of stuff. You have to learn about what they are and how they actually affect the systems, the different filters that we use, all that kind of stuff. We'll get into the basics of that, and then you'll actually see, when you get on the job, what they are and have an idea of what they actually are. With this part of the project, we actually have an installation that we do that is a mock-up. Basically, go to the oil burner section and actually do an rough end for an actual house. And I think the students really like it. It's a nice project. and it actually gives you more of a hands-on of, you know, how all the joints go together and how they actually fit together. And I think you show that to someone, but until they actually do it, I don't think it means as much until you actually get to do the installation side of things. Anything you want to add with that, Peter? Probably.
I would just say that, yeah, 100% right. Once you get in there and get your hands on it and actually see how the systems work, it makes a lot more sense. And yeah, the system that we put together there in class is very similar to what we're doing, on the job for the units that I'm working on. Basically, same idea, like a small residential kind of setup. Yeah.
Yeah. You're working with heat pumps right now, are you, Ian? I think that's what you're actually working with.
Heat pump with the rectangular duct coming off it with a plenum attached to it, basically like what we have up there, with takeoffs for your, for your grill boxes, and then we have a supply return and a exhaust air line as well. Yeah.
Yeah, right on. So we kind of go through that basics to give people an idea of what it actually is. I think it goes usually fairly well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we'll go on to the next slide. The next slide is the metallurgy, welding, and cutting processes. With this right here, I'm just trying to think. So the metallurgy. So basically what we do is we start with the metallurgy. We get into the ferrous, non-ferrous metals, how to basically see the different gauges that we work with. In general, it's about 30 gauge to about 10 gauge. Okay? Usually about 1/64 to about 1/8. Do we use more than that? Yes, we do, but in general, that's about what we do. Different metals that we use, we'll talk about them and see how they're gauged. We'll get into galvanized, mild steel, stainless steel, aluminum, copper, brass, all that kind of stuff. You'll learn about that. And then we'll get into the welding. The welding will focus on the GMAW, gas metal arc welding, which is MIG. So you'll basically learn how to, you'll cut out a fitting, you'll tack it together, making sure that it's nice and square, okay? And then you'll weld it together. What else can I say about it? We'll get into a little bit of cutting. You'll use a spot welder. We'll talk about oxyacetylene, maybe a little bit of plasma cutting, that kind of stuff. You want to add anything there that you really liked about this? Because this one here, I think the welding was probably one of the people, the students usually really like this. We only get it for a day or so, but the theory takes a little bit longer to get into it and the safety and that kind of stuff.
It was a lot of fun doing the welding, and even when in the shop, they do a lot of fabrication too. So they might be making booths or exhaust booths for a lab or whatever. They're welding it all together. So yeah, potentially down the road, as you get more into the trade, you'll get more experience doing it, and they'll trust you to do more complicated welding jobs and stuff like that as you go. Yeah.
Yeah, we're just giving you an introduction, so that way there you know what it is, and hopefully you're comfortable with it. Get in the world when you're out in the job. Because let's face it, a day or two of welding isn't really going to make you a welder, but at least it gives you an idea of how to weld and the process and how to weld the fittings together and everything. All right, so now we're to the math and the applied mathematics. Okay, I'm going to mention this. Okay, so basically in the first semester we have the basic math. Okay, with the basic math, I'm just trying to think if you get decimals, fractions, perimeter, area, volume, conversions, trigonometry, that kind of stuff. So we'll get into that basics. Okay, and I find most people, because we kind of make it relevant to things. I think most people are fairly good with the math. It's not like it's overly hard math, but if you really suck at math, this is probably not the course for you to take. Okay, if you're okay with math, then I would say you'll be fine for this. All right. In the second semester, I'm just trying to think. We kind of get into it and we apply the different math that we do. We do stretch outs. We'll do like an apex height, slant length, pattern angle, chord length. Basically, we'll try to apply it. We'll go with cross-sectional area, how to maintain cross-sectional area. If you got rectangular, round, or square, how to get that size and how to maintain it. Basically, that's what we do. We apply the math that we did in the first semester, and then we show you where you're going to actually use it on the job. Okay? And they're just actually giving you can actually see a couple in the picture here. There's the formula sheet on the left, and then there's some of the math we do on the right. And anything you want to add about this? Because I know you actually did pretty well in the math course and everything. You did. Mm-hmm. going in, you were a little bit nervous, and I think a lot of people are like that. But if you
Mhm.
apply yourself, I think you'll do fine. I mean, you
Mhm.
did quite well.
I think you just
Go ahead.
don't get freaked out by it. Like, everybody's in the same boat. You're not alone. So, help each other and stuff. It's not super hard to understand. And Willie explains it in a really good way. And he's always there too to answer any questions you have. I wrote some notes down and I wrote morning math with Willie because I was always ready for usually Monday morning, and that's a great time to do math. I know it sounds horrible. Do it in the morning and get it out of the way. And usually you're sharper in the morning and it's better. Yeah. That'd be my advice
I
anyway.
agree. I
Yeah,
agree with that.
doing math with Willie.
I mean, I like the math one because we in our trade where we can show you where we're going to use it. I think when people go to school, they learn some of this math and they're like, where the heck am I ever going to use it? Right? They're like, what am I learning this for? But with our course, you're actually seeing where you're going to actually use this. Right? Even the trigonometry, there's ways that we can actually use it on the next job site. If you really aren't comfortable with it, most people in the trade will find another way to do things, and there's all kinds of different ways to do things. If you're not comfortable with math, when you're out in the job, people will find other ways to do it, and it works just as fine. There's no problem with that. But you do have to be able to get through the level exams because we do have 4 levels that you have to get through, and there is definitely going to be math on those exams. Okay, so if you're not comfortable with math and you really hate it, yeah, probably not the trade for it. But if you're okay and you're like, oh yeah, it's been years since I did math. Don't worry, it'll come back. It will come back. Anything else? Okay, yeah, I guess we're to the last, or one of the last slides here. So basically, with the actual course, there is a couple things I want to mention before I get to that. And I think Ian can attest to this, is that I give a lot of freedom in the course that we're doing. Like, I want you to be there every day, and I kind of make the course that way, that I want you there every day. But I have days where you can make up things. So basically, if you have a life and you're out there working and you need, to support your family and everything, and you need certain family time, there's nothing you can do about it. You're going to miss a day. You're going to miss a day here and there. I try to make the course so that you can actually get caught up, or make it so I'm available to help you get caught up. Okay, that's one of the strengths of that, and I really try to make sure that you can do most of your work in class. I even give you study time for the quizzes and tests to try to make sure that people, have a fair chance of passing the course, because that's what it's all about. I'm trying to basically help you succeed and be successful in the actual course, because I really want people to get out in the trade. Right now, we are crying for sheet metal workers, just like most trades. So, you know what I mean? I don't want to see people give up too early because something's a little bit tricky at the start, because I find most people can actually make the, adjustments and actually, become a lot better at whatever they're actually, the challenges are that they're having with the course. Okay. Anything you want to add to that? I don't know. You were there every day pretty much anyway, so.
Yeah, it's good to try to go every day if you can. Like, we some weeks there's tests and then there's assignments. We find out about tests the following week coming up, and it's good just to be there. You might miss some notes that you might need. You might build a fitting one day that you might miss. So it is important to be there as much as you can, and just to stay on top of all your assignments. Don't let things go too long. Get them done as soon as possible, and you'll be much more relaxed. You won't feel so stressed out, trying to get things done on time. But usually, lots of time to get things done. Just as long as you use your time wisely, you'll have no problems. Yeah.
I agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm going to give a summary of this. So this is NSCC Sheet Metal System Summary. Yeah, you start a career in a growing trade. It's a hands-on approach to learning, and if you like working with your hands, trust me, this is definitely a trade that you're going to do that. Work at a pace that works for you. You build a solid foundation to start an apprenticeship in the sheet metal industry. You cultivate relationships. You use NSCC supporting staff to help you achieve your goals. You have a portfolio approach to learning, and it's an opportunity for financial growth. And I can tell you, within about 4 years, a lot of people will be making $80,000, if not more, or a little less, depending on what you're working, where you want to work. But there's an opportunity to make a good living in the trade, and that's why I like really, to be in the school and actually do this, because to me, it's a great opportunity for someone to make a good life for themselves, for them and their family, and that's really why I do it. I really love the chance to do it. I'm thankful for the opportunity to do it as well. I really am. Anything else you want to add to that, Ian?
I was just going to add something real quick, if that's all right.
Yeah, please.
You guys have been great. Hopefully, this has given folks an insight of what it's like to be. And you mentioned some folks maybe have to step away from class for family issues or life goes on, as we know at NSCC. Can you speak just about of how it's your job as a faculty to get these students ready for the workforce, and in that relationship and communication, how important it is to communicate with your faculty or your instructor to say, hey, in 2 weeks' time, we're going to miss this class. Can you just talk about that balance of how you're supposed to get them ready for workforce, and also they're dealing with life as we know, and how to navigate that?
Okay, well, to me, there's quite a bit to that. Right now, I'm going to tell you what we started with. So the very first day when you get there, what I do is I treat it as if I was the foreman on the job. So I get everybody's name and their number. Okay, I get their number. It goes in my phone. They have my number as well, so I give them my number on the very first day. So if they're not going to be there, all I say, please just send me a text to let me know, because people are waiting for you to be there in the morning and stuff, and I think you're only going to be a couple minutes late. A lot of times before I get to the meat and potatoes of things, I'll give a couple of minutes to make sure we don't start without you. But if I know you're not going to be there, then I'm not going to wait for you. But I'm going to treat it as if it's a job site, so I want to communicate with you. And anything you want to add to that we kind of would do, like, to me, I have Fridays to kind of get you caught up a lot of times. And the idea is if you miss time, we'll just say, okay, well, let's do this on Friday at this time. We'll try to make up for the day you missed. And, sometimes it only takes a half an hour to get you caught up. Sometimes it's a fitting or something that takes 2 or 3 hours, and it's not a quick, easy thing to do. So it depends, right, really, on what we're doing. Ian, you want to add anything to that, buddy?
I would just say that, I think Willie does a great job being available. He makes himself available for everybody. I think he goes above and beyond probably what, is expected of him as a teacher, like to do that for students. A lot of teachers I don't think would do that. So, if you do need that time, like, take advantage of it, and, be respectful to Willie, because he's given up his time to try to help you, get caught back up.
To me, if someone's trying to put their effort forward, then I will try to match the effort that they're putting forward. That's really what I try to do, right? I mean, if you're putting effort in, then I'm going to try to put the effort in to help you. That's really how I try to do it. And to me, I want you to succeed. That's really what I want. I hope that answers the question.
That's great.
I don't know if it does 100%.
That's great. I'm going to go to the next slide, just talk a little bit about some money. The certificate, a one-year program at NSCC, it costs $3,620. Did you want to talk a little bit about if there is additional costs or some tools or equipment you may need for the program?
As far as the tools go, there's not really, you don't have to have the tools when we start, because we have the actual hand tools and basically the power tools and everything there. Okay, you'll get a list. So that by the end of the year, you'll have some of the tools you need to do your work experience, and then when you go out and work. But there is, of course, drafting equipment that you have to buy. There is, of course, supplies that you have to buy for your books and modules and things like that. You're going to need boots, gloves, safety glasses. Basically, that's it. There was a time when we were doing the stuff online that the computers were like another thing that you needed. But now we really kind of can get away without having a computer. I try to do all the stuff in class. So that way there, I'm trying to keep the cost down, so people don't have to feel like got to go out and buy a computer or something like that to actually do the course. I want to make it so that anybody can take this course and do it. That's what I'm trying to do. Like, I don't want it to just be a select few who can do the course. No, I want it to be open to everybody. Okay, so that's what I'm trying to do.
That's great. And just for the sake of it, NSCC does have a laptop loan program at all their colleges. So if you're in a situation where you're looking for a laptop, or if you do need one for the section of your sheet metals, you can reach out to your librarian at each campus and ask about the laptop loan program. That's great. I'm going to talk a little bit about scholarships and bursaries. NSCC has a student awards portal. So those students who are accepted into NSCC, they're going to have access to that student awards portal right away. And you will be asked to fill it at the beginning a very quick questionnaire about yourself, the details, who you are, where you're from, and that will have you automatically, or we will make you eligible for a number of scholarships automatically in the portal. But we always encourage students to go back in. As we see there, NSCC is giving out $5 million in scholarships. So we always tell students to go back into that awards portal and see if there's any that are specific to you based off of what you're doing, where you're from, so on and so forth. But there's opportunities to be paid, to get paid by NSCC through community work, through scholarships, bursaries. We always tell students to check out our student awards portal. We do have a question in the chat, that's all right. There was a student that wanted to know, a miss, they wanted to know if there are any common misunderstandings of sheet metal that you've had. So anyone getting into the program, any common misunderstandings before they get into the program, they come September and they're like, oh, I did not expect this about the program.
I think I'm just thinking that a lot of people think that the sheet metal is just working with metal. I mean, yeah, we do work with metal a lot, and we focus on that. But there's a lot more to it because when you get out on the job, probably 80% of the people are actually going to be doing the installation side of it, maybe even a little more than that. But basically, what you're doing is you're learning how to put ventilation systems in. Basically, there's HVAC, and the HVAC guys, what they do is they basically work on the components that we install. So, like, you know, the refrigeration side of things, the electrical side, the control side, that's what they really focus on. That's what they do. We actually install the components, and then they usually do it as a maintenance. There is some maintenance that we do, but they do most of the HVAC, meaning, you know, refrigeration, that kind of stuff.
So as you can imagine, you're in the workforce. You have to be adaptable. You have to have communication skills. You may be on the job site with some folks who are button heads. Do you touch base on what it's like to work in the industry when you're off in different job sites, and what's it like, communication skills and getting along with other folks?
Okay, so you know what? I think any trade is like that. It doesn't matter if it's sheet metal, carpentry, electrical, plumbing, whatever. Usually on most job sites that I was on, what we'd have is we'd have a general contractor, and the general contractor you'd actually meet. Okay, and there'd basically be like once a week there'd be a meeting, and basically, okay, you're going to work here. You're going to put your duct at this site. We're going to put our sprinkler at this site. We're going to put an electrical here. We're going to put a plumber here. Even though the drawings say this, we have to be able to kind of work together to actually put everything in so they actually go together. Because you can just imagine it, duct work's pretty big. So we'd actually usually have, there could be like electrical up above us, then there'd be duct work, and then you'd have plumbing, sprinkler underneath that. So that kind of process is pretty important. So this could be, you know, an ongoing thing. And not to mention everybody that you work with each day. You're communicating with your journey person. You're communicating with other trades. Like that's just part of any job. It doesn't matter what construction is. You're doing that every day. So yeah, it's definitely very important.
This one's for you. So all the folks who didn't know. Oh, sorry. I was just going to mention because someone asked about the work term. So students are expected in all of our programs at NSCC to do a 5-week work term by the time they finish up the course. Did you want to talk a little bit about your experience, Ian? And it's the responsibility of the student to find theirs. I'm sure there's a little bit of collaboration with Willie, your instructor, your faculty who's been there for so long to help you find a good place that works for you. Did you want to talk a little bit about your experience?
Yeah, I think I had a great experience with my work term. So I got put on with Gilson's Construction, and so I spent a few days in the shop there working with the guys in the shop, and then after that I went on to the Marlstone site. It's a downtown Halifax site next to the Scotia Bank Center, and we're basically building an apartment building now. So doing all the install there, like the team welcomed me on. Gilson's company was very kind to me, welcomed me on. You know, I've just had nothing but a positive experience. And just to touch base on your other question about the working together with the other trades, like that's something we do every day. You know, we have electricians working around us, we have plumbers working over us. We need to communicate with them. You know, if we're going to be in their way, if they're going to be in our way, you know, we have to make sure that we're all working together to reach that goal. And it's something that we're going to have to do every day in the job.
Right on. Well, you guys have been amazing. This is the time. Do you have any final thoughts, anything you want to wrap up before we finish up today?
Not really. I'm sure as soon as we shut this off, I'll say, geez, I should have mentioned this, but no, right now I can't really think of anything.
That's okay. We've covered a lot. And if folks are here today and they have missed out on an opportunity to ask a question, our contacts or recruitment, you can email them at any time if it's about admissions. My contact is there if it's a prospective student wanting to look at different programs. And really generously has added his contact for folks to reach out if it's very specific to sheet metals. We have just wrapped up. This is June 2nd, 2025. Thank you guys for being a part of today, and thank you guys for showing some insights. I appreciate you guys taking the time out this afternoon. Yeah,
Thanks, Ian.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me.
Ian, thank you very much, bud, for hosting us, bud. Good job, buddy.
Thank you very much. You guys take care.
Thank
Take
you.
it easy. Have a good one.